based on the usual episode count when it comes to most own shows, we could be just after the halfway point when it comes to the Kings of Napa. And it seems in this episode they wanted to focus just on the core cast members in order to handle the majority of issues that took place long before we even came aboard this story and journey. To begin, to begin with everything that's going on in Bridget's life, for some reason she decides she wants to start getting drunk at the winery, specifically in the production office, and draw both August and also Dana in, and bring in Melanie and set the scene for what's going to happen. It seems, for whatever reason, she's not feeling guilty about, messing around with Rose, what she's doing on terms of possibly sabotaging the King's wine and maybe also doing that to Sean and Sean's wine. Her issue is learning that her grandmother was put into a psychiatric hospital in upstate New York, and her feeling the need to reveal this to Dana and August and confront Melanie about it. That's how things start off. However, in our second topic, we're going to talk about what happens when Vanessa gets put into this situation because she happens to magically show up, and then everybody gets locked into the same room together. Once that happens, it becomes a lot of let me tell you the full story type of moments. For example, when it comes to Melanie, she makes it very clear that Vanessa and Sandra's version of events, that is not the whole story. The whole story is, at 16 years old, Melanie came in late one night. Sandra was very upset about it. She found a joint in Melanie's bag, smacked the mess out of her, and because of the smack, Sandra's husband, Melanie and Vanessa's dad, came in because he was a good guy compared to her, being, I wouldn't say erratic, but definitely somebody who can be potentially violent. So he decides he wants to step in. She kind of shrugs him off. He loses his footing, hits his head, gets an aneurysm, and dies. Now, as shown by how Sandra acted in the last episode, she's not necessarily close with either one of her daughters. So in Melanie's mind, sharing this secret was a method to possibly get on to Sandra's good side. And with that, she allowed Sandra to control the narrative. However, she didn't get the results she thought she was going to get. It didn't become a better relationship because now they shared this secret. It in fact got worse because, as we saw with Sandra in the last episode, she blames Melanie rather than owns up to what she did. And with that, things got so bad that once Melanie was able to go live with some family in Georgia, she left. And this left Vanessa by herself with their mother, who, because of killing her husband, was increasingly just losing it. And it got so bad that once Vanessa was 18 and had some type of power of attorney and she had some type of power of attorney, she committed Sandra, and she committed Sandra, and that's pretty much what Sandra has gone through and deal with for, we don't know how old Vanessa is, but I would say it's at least 10, 20 years that Sandra's been locked up or has been institutionalized. But that's not the only thing where we get the full story of. The second part, when it comes to Melanie revealing the whole truth and nothing but the truth, especially her truth, is when it comes to Reginald and their affair. Now, I believe either in episode 1 or 2, it was noted that the first time that Reginald and Melanie slept together was while Vanessa was on break, and with that, she was on break, and with that, there technically wasn't an issue that there should have been. Yes, you don't sleep with your sister's man or even ex-man, but when it comes to Reginald and Melanie, it seems very much clear that it wasn't Melanie trying to go after Reginald, it was the other way around. And granted, in Vanessa's mind, that's not the truth, because she sees Reginald to very much be like their father, so she thinks it's an Oedipus complex. Mind you, Her saying that to Melanie doesn't really disregard the idea that, hey, maybe for Vanessa it was an Oedipus complex, but Vanessa's very much not thinking straight and thinking about how people can clap back at her when she says things, but set that to the side. As noted, first time was when Vanessa and Reginald went on a break. The second time, and this is assuming that it only happened twice and wasn't like a long-standing thing, the second time came from when Vanessa decided, after August was born, she wanted to try her hand once again at becoming a journalist. Unfortunately, that wasn't in the Napa area, so she went off halfway across the country and really tried to give it a go. And while she was doing that, Melanie stepped in to play mommy to August and also Dana. And with that, Reginald and Melanie playing house led to one thing, if not another. And so they messed around again. But no sooner than Vanessa coming back, that apparently ended, and that might have been part of the trigger for Melanie eventually moving to Africa to do, not missionary work, but to be in the medical field over there. That, and also the settlement for that pharmaceutical thing with the doctor's office or whatever happening. So on top of having the opportunity to move to Africa, she had the money to. And this leads to another person asking for the whole truth from Melanie, and that's Bridget, in terms of, why did you leave me behind? And the only answer that Melanie can come up with is she couldn't provide a stable home environment for Bridget, so that's why she left her with Reginald, Vanessa, August, and them. Because even though we're not told about any place besides one that she was in Africa, apparently she felt like that wasn't the place for her daughter to be. So she left her behind, and the way that Bridget makes it sound, because of doing that, it led to a lot of abandonment issues, and not just abandonment issues in terms of how it fractured her relationship with Melanie, but also when it comes to love, she always feels like she's not enough or something like that. Which leads into the final topic, which we just titled You Know What You Did, in which they address that whole issue of Bridget and her issues with love, and maybe even finding people who are unavailable. Because, as you can kind of see when it comes to this show, a lot of generational trauma is passed down. There's a lot of patterns when it comes to this family. So when it comes to Bridget and Rose having their relationship, it's no different than what's happening when it comes to Reginald and Melanie back in the day. It's just we're not sure who exactly is the pursuer in the situation, though. Right now, you can possibly say it's equal, if not a little bit of a nudge toward Bridget. Either way, with Dana knowing this, he bides his time. Originally, anyway, he bides his time, because right now the only issue is trying to figure out a way to get August on board. However, once he really understands that this wasn't just some fling or some mistake or what have you when it comes to Bridget and Rose, and now Rose wants to take a break from Dana, maybe even might be in the process of breaking up with him, it's time to get petty on this train, and he decides to pull every single lever. He tells Sean and Sean that Bridget probably was the one who poisoned their stuff. He decides that either he calls the cops, or else he has Sean and Sean call the cops, and they show up at the door. And with that, he tells August straight up, this is not just about when it comes to her messing with people's plants and possibly eventually hitting our vines next. It's also about revenge. It's a 2-for-1 special. And again, showing that patterns keep repeating themselves. As Bridget's being taken away by the cops, Melanie, of course, is trying to keep her daughter from getting arrested. A cop forcefully pushes out the way. She falls down, hits her head, starts convulsing, and it seems like she might die like her dad did, or at least the show is going to give us a kind of scare that makes it seem like she may die. And the sad thing is about this, her going to convulsions and all that comes after her and Vanessa, with all this stuff aired out, and Vanessa's starting to see things as a more three-dimensional view. Those two really starting to reconcile and possibly get back to being close sisters again, especially after Melanie abandoning her when it came to taking care of the mom, the Reginald situation, and all that. And it's kind of sad, at least if they really follow through and have Melanie potentially die. I think the main thing that we have to look at as a highlight for this episode is how it addresses the past and helps you really clue into what's going on in the present. Generational trauma is something that's serious, and while we don't necessarily know what came from Reginald's side of the family, we do get what comes from Melanie and Vanessa's side. Sandra and the way she talked to her kids is why Vanessa talks the way she does, is why how Dana talks the way she does. Because of the way Sandra put her two children against each other, that you can see got passed on to how August and Dana treat each other. When it comes to Melanie, because of her feeling abandoned by her mother emotionally, she left. And with that kind of disconnect when it comes to both her mother and sister, it made it easy for her to abandon Bridget and leave her off with her sister. And you could even add in, because Melanie abandoned Vanessa, it kind of made her, a little bit iffy about family, or at least the idea of family being there and sticking together. So after she had August and, at that point gave up so much of herself, she decided to leave to try to recover and do as Melanie did and think of herself and put herself first rather than worry about some kids or whoever. And yes, you can say that Vanessa did kind of learn her lesson in a way, or at least felt some type of guilt since she came back, but it does really seem that, as Dana noted when it came to his issues with Rose and why he didn't tell anybody, nobody really gained the tools to handle their issues and their trauma. If anything, you see that money provided distractions, but money didn't solve their problems. For never mind the idea of therapy, but look at August. This is probably one of the best episodes for August, since it shows that her anxiety when it came to living up to expectations, because she was given all this privilege, was potentially immense. She's expected to have children, even though Vanessa struggled to have children and possibly keep a career. She is expected to assume this role as president, while also dealing with people like Dana who don't support her, and even when it comes to her mother, her giving that 6-month timeline means you are really at the deadline of what you want to do in order to prove yourself. And when you add in the fact that August is a young woman who knows what the board thinks of her besides her being, Reginald's daughter. And that's a lot to deal with, since, what is she, in her early, mid, maybe late 20s? Not too long out of high school, so not too long out of college, I should say. And her only job has been working for this wine company. And even when it comes to her job at the wine company, I don't know what she really did before she was president. I know she helped found the land that Reginald bought. I know that she definitely was one of his advisors, but how much she was into the grit of the day-to-day, I don't recall. But either way, I feel like her going off on Vanessa really pushed her character to seem more like a lead rather than a strange supporting role who was in a whole lot of scenes. And just to sum this all up, because I feel like I'm kind of in a tangent, I do feel that at this point we kind of made like a road marker. Like, after this point, we're really going to start moving forward. We've explored everything we could in the past, at least when it comes to the Pierce family side. So now we're going to start figuring out not how we can dig deeper into the wound, but instead how we can heal. With that said, I have to admit, I'm kind of on the fence about how quickly it seemed everybody was able to move on. It sort of triggers memories of Our Kind of People, which just ended its first season a couple of weeks ago, in terms of you have these characters who, when the drama starts, they have these big grandeur moments of going off on people, sometimes publicly. Yet, when it comes to reconciliation, it's a quick process that only takes like 1 or 2 hours, in their time that is. And it's kind of weird to me. Like Vanessa, for example, her forgiving Melanie after explaining everything, what happened with their mom and Reginald, considering how she fired Bridget, pretty much banned Melanie, and was digging through Melanie's stuff for evidence, it confuses me a little bit how these, what, few hours, I think it was less than 6 hours, just having that amount of time stuck with her sister, that pretty much got rid of all their issues, or at least allowed for a bridge to be built so that they can meet up again and kind of move forward. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not against it. I'm so for this show moving forward and cutting down on how much dramatic storylines it has. But at the same time, I don't know. I think it's one of those cases where it's like, if in real life that is, where if somebody disrespects you in a very big type of way, I want the apology. I want the effort made to mend fences to be just as big, you know? And I want to show, and I not show, and I want to see that it's a real thing and not a case of how it kind of feels with Vanessa, where she got embarrassed to the point where she had to move on, versus it being a genuine thing where she's realizing, okay, I didn't know the full story, my bad. And even when it comes to the kids, like for example, Dana and August kind of never minds all that conversation, all that talk she had with Dana about possibly finding a new CFO and really like declaring war. And I'm just confused. This man has been undermining you every chance he got. He got personal with it and decided to have his friend put cameras in your home to really undermine you and possibly make you look like a fool. Yeah, we're gonna let that go? What? Overall, we appreciate that Mole Bottle Blues, which, by the way, is an entertaining title for an episode, really decided to just focus on the core 5 or so characters and what they bring to the show, and also the drama that they have in, I wouldn't say squashing it, but at least determining that it's enough time spent dwelling on things we need to move forward.